Hello and welcome to a quick video about CMSs. Today I'm joined by Stu Bennett and Nick Sim, two senior software engineers at Hive IT. Yeah. So do you want to start off by telling us, Nick, what is a CMS?
So a CMS is a content management system. It's a way for essentially most lay people to create content and put it on a website, essentially. So in the context of how we normally use CMSs in Hive, we build out a CMS for people to use essentially, and we kind of provide the front end for those CMSs. But usually we use a product, so Wordpress is one example of that. It's like the granddaddy of like most CMSs. Everyone's heard of it, and yeah, it's like if you've ever used it, essentially most people are familiar with it from a blogging perspective. You write a bunch of blogs, they appear on a website, essentially.
Yeah, it's quite literally managing the content that goes on a website.
Yeah, exactly.
And Stu, what is a headless CMS?
So I suppose if CMS is like the tool in which allows you to put the content together and then the website to like display it to your users. Headless CMS would be like just the tool to put the content in, and then you can kind of choose whichever head you want to kind of like display the content to your users with. So you could build your own website in a certain specific language, or you can use a mobile app, and they can all kind of like interface to your database or your content, I suppose, from your headless CMS.
Have you got like an analogy you could use?
I suppose if the CMS, or like the headless CMS is like your Lego map without a head, you could choose whatever head to put on onto your Lego man. So I don't know if that really clarifies.
My analogy was you're like it's just like a different like you as a person are like the content, which is managed by the headless CMS. The clothes that you wear is like the front end, so you can wear different clothes, but the content at the end of the day is the same. So yeah, that would be my analogy for it.
Yeah, and we've used Sanity quite a bit on the Western Park Cancer Charity website, right?
Yes.
How did we go about using that as a headless CMS?
Steve.
So yeah, we use Sanity to like be our headless CMS for that project. Well, after quite a long investigation from Nick, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And that Sanity was one that came out as a front runner, which we've enjoyed using. And what was the question? Sorry, why?
Why did we use it?
So specifically, I think we chose Sanity was for a few reasons, but one reason I remember particularly was because we could easily keep a reference of like various pages that are linked together to help with long-term management of lots of content, so that if you've got like stale pages, we don't want them to link to like pages that no longer exist. And Sanity kind of like gave us the tools that we needed to keep that reference, so whenever you would delete a page, it would tell you specifically like, oh well, this page is linked and this page is linked, this will need removing, just to make sure you don't end up with like a big like broken web of pages, if that makes sense, because they had quite like a complex structure in their website. So that's why I think Sanity came as front runner, if I recall.
Well, that's like one of many things. There's a lot. Sanity's got a lot going for it. So I think one of the main reasons was developer experience is great. For us as developers, we can have quite a lot of fine-grained control over the UI that the admin users can see. So there's a lot of customization potential. You can literally build out like whatever you want, really. To the extent that we were thinking about it we were thinking of using a form builder essentially inside of the admin, so that we could allow admins to create forms on the front end, which if you've ever used WordPress is like basically a 7 gauntlet of hell, like where you have to install like a multitude of plugins and like I don't know, like advanced custom fields, for example, is one of the main ones. But yeah, like it's all like a bit all that kind of stuff is a bit of an afterthought and doesn't really work super well. But like in Sanity, you can literally build whatever you want. So it's for us from a development perspective, it gives us a lot more control, which makes me very happy. But there are also other things as well. I looked at a bunch of CMSs in the past, So a bunch of these other headless CMSs basically force you to use their UIs, which are usually hosted on a website somewhere, and you have very little control over where that is actually like hosted. So for us, we host it on our own platform, on our websites. We have a lot of control over that as well. They just give you a lot of control. They don't treat you like children. It's just like, you can approach it as a developer, essentially.
Do you still use any plugins in Sanity, or?
Yeah, they do have plugins as well. Yeah, so they've got like plenty. We've used a few. For example, using like an image gallery just to make it easier for users to see all the images that are being used on the website. They can add like alt text very conveniently from there as well. Stuff like that.
Was there like more control and more like flexibility and potential to customize content in Sanity than WordPress, would you say?
I'd say so.
Yeah, I think without having to jump through a whole load of hoops, and you definitely don't need to like, you're not depending on all of these plugins. But I suppose you kind of, when you like, I suppose building a WordPress, not to bash on it too much, it's like you need advanced custom fields if you're making any form of like custom website. Like they're just like, they might as well be thrown in with like WordPress itself. Yeah. It feels like so. Yeah, I'd say.
But then it's not like part of WordPress core, so it's like almost like this. Yeah, you're relying on a completely separate entity to like do the right thing in a lot of cases, which can be like a little bit. There's a bit of friction, I think, essentially.
Would you say as like a beginner software developer or like a web designer, can there sometimes be like the limitations to Sanity? Is that like it can be maybe like harder to use? Would you say?
I think there's a higher upfront learning like
requirement for entry. I feel like you need to know a little bit more about like data structures and kind of know what you need upfront. Whereas if you just want a simple blog post website, WordPress might be quite easy to throw together. There's loads of kind of information out there to help you get set up and running.
I guess it's like that with like a difference with traditional CMSs versus like your headless CMSs. You have to think a lot more about your content and like what it is that you're kind of needing it to do. So having content structured in a way so that it can be used potentially in multiple different ways. So like having it surfaced in a mobile app, or having it surfaced on a website, or maybe some other website uses your content as well. Like you can use it quite flexibly.
And you might need to capture like certain fields and pieces of information for the different use cases as well, I suppose. So you need to think about that as well, just to add on. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So in what situation, let's say we're working with a client, in what situation would we be more likely to use a headless CMS than just your traditional old CMSs?
I think budget usually comes into it. So WordPress is usually almost like lowest bar to entry for like a lot of people. A lot of people are very familiar with it. A lot of companies also use it. So it's almost like a universal language for like a lot of work, for a lot of the level of knowledge that people need to actually be useful with a CMS. So I think the main sorry, what was it again?
The question was like, why, in what situation would you use like a headless CMS rather than like a traditional one?
Okay, so if you want to actually build out something that's a little bit better built, I suppose, is kind of a point. Because it's kind of like, say, using WordPress is a lot simpler, and you do have to rely on plugins and the generosity of like the plugin developers to give you the functionality that you need, versus Sanity, where you can kind of like build the functionality yourself almost.
She said the word control quite a bit earlier, about that being a big benefit.
Control also has an implication that you also has a bit of a cost, to it.
You've got to build it, haven't you? Like from scratch almost. You can build exactly what you want, but it's going to take longer. I suppose actually.
Yeah, so it would depend on how much time like developers or web designers have for it.
On the project, definitely. And if you're not using headless, or if you are using headless, you're gonna have to build like your front end as well. So you don't get that like thrown in, and you don't get that base that's already set up.
I guess if you like just go for a simple blog site, then WordPress might be totally suitable for you. If you're a charity that doesn't have a large budget, it might be totally suitable for you. I think people hate on WordPress still nowadays, but it's not. It's actually quite useful for a lot of companies. You know what I mean?
And we've it's actually been updated in recent years as well. So we've actually been using it as a headless CMS on some of our projects as well, which we've used. And it's not been like that bad.
We've successfully used it on Sheffield Mental Health Guide. It powers their admin. Uses advanced custom fields. Kind of does work similar-ish to Sanity once you actually have that plugin in, but then there's still a bunch of issues with it, and especially like kind of Stu mentioned earlier around like referencing things and cleaning up dead references to stuff is like WordPress like completely fails in that regard.
And actually on that project for the Sheffield Mental Health Guide, they actually originally had WordPress as like a whole CMS with the WordPress front end for their website, and we actually then took the head off and we've like put our own front end on it now. So I don't know if that's relevant to the question that was asked, but just a point about like, you know, WordPress isn't so bad, like, you know, it's kind of evolved a little bit, and we're able to use it headlessly now, and that's what we did on that particular project.
Other than using WordPress and Sanity as headless CMSs, have we used anything else as a headless CMS before?
Dabbled a little bit with like Contentful, also Datto CMS. We were like, this was all like in this kind of investigation phase for Western Park. We were like, I audited like, it was like 7 or 8 CMSs. It was quite a lot. They seemed okay, but there was just like something missing. I think like as soon as I kind of like found Sanity, it was like, okay, it's ticking like nearly every box here. So
So I appreciate all of the different tools and technology that we use are like changing all the time. But right now, would you say Sanity is probably the best one to use as a headless CMS?
It's the only one I've really used extensively. So I'm going to say yes, because I've really enjoyed using it. And I think Nick mentioned before about if you're a charity with a small budget, for example, WordPress might be okay. With Sanity, we're actually using like their not-for-profit tier, so you can kind of get quite a decent level of what would you say, like their like plan that you get included, all of the various allowances. Was actually really good for that.
They're quite generous.
That's the word. So for the Western Park project, that was a big advantage. That aside, also just like working with Sanity, it's just been really nice to use. So I would, whenever there's an opportunity for a CMS project, I'm like, let's use Sanity, please, like if possible.
Well, I think we might be. Word on the grapevine might be that we try and revamp our own website with Sanity. So that kind of shows the whole like level of confidence we kind of have in it.
It's a huge compliment to them. Right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this chat about CMSs. I hope this has been useful to anyone watching or listening, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day.